Baird singing Restoring Hope. They're our theme song, and Matt is going to be in studio tomorrow with me here as him and Perry Ross. Perry's the worship leader out at Lutheran Church of Hope, along with some other great folks, are putting on a fundraiser for a little girl named Savannah who died of a terrible disease, and we're trying to raise money to help people understand this terrible disease and how it impacts children and what we can do about it. And that's called Mito Java. Is that how you'd pronounce that, Joe? Mito Java?
I suppose.
Okay. I know the Java is the coffee part.
Yeah.
So it's happening this Friday from 6 to 9 o'clock at the Green Grounds Cafe at 117th and 5th in West Des Moines. If you're listening to this program offline, and therefore you may not be local, but you want to help, go to savannahshope.com, SAVANNAHS, hope.com, and you can learn more about that. But anyway, we hope to have Matt Baird and Perry Ross in the studio tomorrow playing a little acoustic guitar and singing. You know Perry, don't you? Mm-hmm. I think the two of those guys will do really well together. All right, it's Restoring Hope Monday, and we want to invite you, if you haven't heard, Restoring Hope, which it started as Recovery Monday between you and I 6-8 months ago, goes national this Sunday on XM Sirius. It'll also be on this radio station here at 99.3 KTIA, and it'll also be on the Webcast One Live.com. I think it's actually going to be on RestoringHopeLive.com, but anyway, too many websites. So however you're listening to this right now, you will be able to get this program live or by podcast. And we've got people that are going to come in and tell their stories, because I believe in the midst of every one of our stories, that's our testimony to our personal relationship with God. And somewhere in the middle of that story, God planted a seed. And I don't know when that seed's going to nurture and grow and bloom. Sound like Jerry Carver from Hy-Vee, don't I? The green thumb guy.
I love that guy. I listen to him every week.
But God planted something inside of my testimony that you're supposed to hear. And there's nothing I can do. I don't know what it is. I have no control when it comes out. I just share my testimony. And that's kind of the basics of Restoring Hope, is people sharing their testimony and having people hear something that makes sense and kind of moves people on in the right direction. And we're going to do shows about addictions. We're going to do shows about hurts. We're going to do shows about habits. And we're going to do shows about hangups. Our first guest is Jack Moreland, who is a neat guy. I suppose he's 55. And in the 60s, he was a flaming... he lived a flaming gay lifestyle. Okay, was that politically correct there? Did I say that right?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
I don't need to do that. This is not the opinion of Joe Mines and St. Gregory's yet. And he found Christ in the midst of his gay lifestyle and asked Christ to relieve him of this, whatever it is. I'm trying to be fair. I'm trying not to be, a cracking the whip on that lifestyle. And God lifted that desire for him to have relations with people of the same gender. And he got married and has 2 grown kids. And he speaks very well. Jack was also on Governor Branstad's, when he was first governor, Governor Branstad's Civil Rights Commission. Oh. And so it's an amazing story. And that's going to be our first guest. And that'll be Sunday, the 21st day of April. It'll be noon to 1 on XM, and then that show will continue on webcastonelive.com, and we'll unpack some stuff a little bit more, because an hour is very rarely long enough to tell the story. But those people listening on XM will hear beginning to end. We're not going to leave them hanging, and then, I wouldn't do that. And I think the folks at XM would probably shoot me. You can't stop in the middle of a show. So anyway, that's coming up this Sunday. We ask that you join us. God's on the move. He's on the move in a huge way. He's impacting lives. Maybe you've always known that. Maybe I just finally got my, as Pastor Mike would say, my Jesus goggles on. But he's touching lives all around this platform and this program And I can't wait. I salivate. I pray for those letters from listeners who tell us how this program has impacted them.
Well, I tell you, after talking to you the other day, Mac, I can't let it go unsaid that a big congratulations are in order for you. I mean, that's a really big deal that you're being picked up by XM. Congratulations. Obviously, somebody out there is seeing the benefits that you're really bringing to a lot of hurting people out there. And there's such a big void, especially in our churches today, because you can go to church and you worship and you're around all of these people, but there's so many people that feel so alone, even on Sundays, even amidst hundreds of people sometimes, depending on their congregation. And that's what this is all about, is really there's things that you understand about some of the difficulties in life, and things that this show is really aimed at tackling that really helps them to understand, what does it mean as far as letting Jesus help them guide themselves back into the fray where they can actually be in that community. Because when you feel like you're alone and you or a loved one is dealing with a substance abuse, it just seems like you're on the outside of everything. Yeah. And this is such a big deal. Yeah. So congratulations to you. It's a really awesome thing. And I could tell you, just from the conversations I've had with you off the air, he's clearly working in your life right now. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
When I surrender, you and I grew up when surrender was bad. You paid cowboys and Indians, or good guys and bad guys, and the guy that had to surrender was the guy that lost. Mm-hmm. What a misnomer that is in a Christ-filled world. And but I get no credit for this. Credit goes to you, Joe. Credit goes to Michael Hamilton. Credit goes to Father Tattoo for helping in the beginning with a beautiful logo, just an incredible logo. I think the logo is perfect.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. It just shouts at you. And Eric, David, and Krista Bolt, and my wife. I always forget to thank my wife. No, I do. I always forget to thank CJ. And you know how I know I always forget? Because she reminds me that I forgot.
Well, if you're anything like me, I think the reason for that is I know when it comes to my wife, she's just always in the back of my mind, so it feels like I already mentioned her. Maybe that's it.
Well, if my wife had not given me, and for those of you that aren't married, this may not make sense, but for those of us that are and have been, if my wife hadn't given me permission to build this platform 4 years ago, when it was just Max World Live and we were doing a bunch of crazy shows, wouldn't be here today. So it's just amazing to look at God's work in our life at 3,000 feet or 30,000 feet and realize how these pieces come together, and we have no reason why at the time that this person comes into our life or comes besides us or whatever you want to call it. But it's an amazing thing. So I just want the letters. That's what I want. Somebody asked me the other day, how will you know it's successful? And I rambled off, well, I've got underwriters that, they need to get, people to help them. And I've got some really good people that have come around me that need compensated for the work they've done and haven't been able to be compensated. And so I'd like that. And then I said, in the stories, I want to hear the stories. The woman in Indiana, for those of you that don't know this story, real quickly, about a year ago, I was doing a show on gay marriage, and somebody called me up. It was Gil from Ames called me and said, well, how do you know, at what point did you choose girls over boys? Thinking that I wouldn't have an answer to that, but he misunderstood. And I said, Mark Winchell, 6th grade. I was staying at his night. We were sleeping. He leaned over and tried to kiss me. And I jumped out of the bed and I went, I like girls. So I know when I chose. I know that moment. And some woman was listening in Indiana, had never listened. Do you know this story?
No.
Some mother was listening in Indiana. I don't know. She doesn't know how she got onto the thing. Obviously, it was on the website. She doesn't know how she ended up where she did. It was just audio that came in. And she stopped and she listened. And I made the comment that if your boys and girls drastically change their behavior and their attitudes when a new friend comes into the picture, you need to look at that. And this woman's listening. Her husband's serving in Afghanistan, so she's basically a single mom right now, or a mom alone. And her son had got a new friend down the street. And her son, who I think was like 11, was beginning to change his activities and change his actions. And one day she walked in and she caught him on a teen porn site. And she said, where did you learn that? And the boy was honest enough and had been raised the right way to say, well, my new friend, I'm just going to call him Johnny, showed it to me. So in an incredibly Christian, non-offensive way, this little boy's mommy called Johnny's mommy. And somehow God blessed that conversation so nobody was offended and nobody, threw rocks and said, I just want you to know that this is what my son said. And if it's not true, I'm sorry. I can't help but pass it along to you. So her mom goes to Johnny and said, where did you learn this? And Johnny says, from Grandpa. And Grandpa had been sexually abusing Johnny and showing in these websites. So Johnny's mom called her sister and said, do you know about this? Sister breaks down in tears. Yeah, it happened to my oldest boy. I just never wanted to tell anybody that Dad was doing that. Dad's in jail. How many people did we stop from being abused because that woman heard me say that because God wanted her to listen at the right time? If you don't call that a God thing, then you and I are way off. And I know you do. How many generations did we maybe save from being sexually abused?
That's a humbling thing to think about.
Yeah.
It sure is.
Because Johnny's on this side doing it, and now this other little boy's doing it. Well, chances are it's probably going to pass on. How many boys are going to be molested by Johnny and this other boy in the process? I mean, it's kind of the Jerry Sandusky thing. How big of a hole did this stop from being dug any deeper?
Yeah.
Anyway, those are the stories I want to hear.
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to know it's successful. And I'm going to save those stories. I'm going to put them in. I may put them in a book someday. But I'm going to purposely have a file, and I'm going to print. I don't trust these computers. I'm going to print those letters, and I'm going to put them in a file, and I'm going to remember.
Well, I would think that's going to be your most concrete evidence of what's working and what's not. Is and that is a little bit different with this show. It's people are going to have to tell you about what actually happens in their lives, and that's also why I think it's such an important show, because it's about really personal issues, and we don't have to be personal to or with you. Just by talking and explaining through some of the thought processes, and just having something that really shows that you're not just alone. It really helps someone to start to confront the issue that they're facing every day, just in and of itself. So it's a really great thing.
There was a guy that showed up to his first 12-step meeting on Saturday, a meeting I went to, very first one he'd ever been to. He did not introduce himself as an alcoholic or an addict, hadn't gotten that far emotionally. A lot of people talked to him during the meeting, telling him it was great. Everybody in this room had been to their first meeting. And when he finally spoke at the end of the meeting, he said, I didn't know there were other people like me. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. And he said, I come to this meeting and I see a room full of people just like me. And that's powerful when we figure that out.
You were there?
Yeah.
That was probably really scary for him to realize that then. Looking over, he's just like, oh my gosh.
That was a slam against me, wasn't it?
Well, you called me Pee Wee Herman a couple weeks ago.
I haven't this week.
I'm on the offense.
I haven't this week.
Well,
So now you're going to take the first shot.
Yeah, I got a wound.
Over the bow.
I got a wound.
Okay. Well, let's do an 8th and 9th step, and then we'll be over. 17 after the hour, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get down to some of the basics. We're going to remind you of the simple things that may be happening in your family, with your friends, and those people around you that may cause them to fall into deep depression, addiction, abuse. That's the topic today. And we'll be back live on webcastonelive.com.
Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, What type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope, open my eyes to see the world through different eyes, revealing your light, restoring hope.
21 minutes after 3 o'clock on this, the 15th day of April in the Lord's year 2013. And it was exactly 54 years ago today that I was born. This is my birthday. And I want to thank my buddy Chris DeBolt, who put something on the website or on Facebook about my birthday. And I'm just overwhelmed with the number of people who have responded. 86 people. Have said something about it being my birthday, so I appreciate that. I know this is going to sound silly, but literally I don't count them anymore. I turned 50, and that was kind of magical, and I turned 53, and that was important too. And but it's just good. It's a good time for the kids to come over and play, and getting together with our small group tonight at somebody's house who's a magnificent cook. Jeannie, if you're listening, I'd really like that escargot if you could get it. So anyway, we're going to have some fun tonight.
Well, speaking of that, I was going to ask you if I did it right. I tried to use the Mac McCoy happy birthday phrase on the comments when I saw that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it's, what is it?
Did you do
HBMMJM.
Yeah, it'd be HB, happy birthday, Mac McCoy, FJ, from Joe.
Oh.
Mine's always HB, and then the initials, and then FM, which is from Mac. But
I knew it wasn't going to be right.
you'd be from Joe. Where's the one that you put on there? I'll have to find it. And what Joe's talking about, if you're a friend of mine on Facebook, I do this every day. I don't think I miss a day. Where I go into the birthdays, because there's on my friends list, there's somewhere between 6 and 10 every day probably. Yeah. And on each one of them, I hit the old cap locks and then HB, and then I use their initials, which gets really interesting when you have maiden names and married names and middle names. Sometimes there's 4 letters: first name, middle name, maiden name, and then new last married name. But so if you're a friend of mine on Facebook and I didn't do that for you in the last couple of years and you had a birthday, let me know. You know what I used to do? I used to print a line that said happy, 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 happy. Copy, paste, double. copy paste double to the point where it was just a scroll
you drive
of
me
happy
nuts.
birthday. And that's what I used to do. And here's what's interesting. I got some messages today on Facebook that the only time this person and I obviously communicate is on birthdays.
Yeah.
Because that's all there are, these happy birthdays. So, but we're a family who celebrates birthdays. We are. We make a big deal out of birthdays. My wife is just stupendous. Whenever we have a birthday every month. Do we have a birthday every month? I think there's 1 month we don't. I think maybe October we don't have a birthday in our family. But otherwise we get together during the month and we have a big spread, and we're doing that Saturday over at our house. So you're welcome to come, you and your bride.
Well,
join us. Bring your swimsuit.
That's usually the day that my wife
Now, come on.
makes very, very sure that I've got plenty going on regardless.
So if I called her, she'd be in charge of those plans.
She'll schedule me.
She'll schedule
me out,
Schedule you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it has to revolve around her schedule. Usually it's a lot less fun than going to somebody's birthday
So
celebration.
it could be, but you don't think she'd love free dinner with lots of people hanging around, swimming in the pool and enjoying each other's company? You don't think that'd be a great afternoon for her? It's an afternoon deal, so you'll be home by dark.
Well, if it, she would probably send me and not go with.
That'd be fine.
Because then, that's a blessing for her.
Then she gets to spend the day without you.
That's right.
All right. Let's talk a little bit. I told you Matt Baird is going to be here tomorrow with Perry Ross. I think Perry's coming to sing some songs and talk about a really important fundraiser they're having. Wednesday and Thursday, a little politics. Tom Coates and David Vaught. David just resigned as the auditor for the state of Iowa. He just resigned there. He's had that job many years. Thursday, a fired up guy by the name of Craig Bergman is in the house, and we're going to talk a little bit. And then Friday, I have a surprise guest. So that's what's coming up for the week. All right. So when you and I planned this show, we thought after the months and months of extensive conversation we had, you wanted to kind of slip back into some of the basics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to me like I'm a 6-year-old. Tell me what that means.
Well, I'll tell you, the reason why it was kind of on the top of my head, I'm at St. Gregory Center. Most of my job really deals around our admissions staff. Okay. And, their job is to really help people work through who are calling into us for help. How do they get help for their loved one? How do they get help for themselves and so forth? And that's really how it's amazing how close you can keep your pulse on, the mood of the people out there when it comes to addictions. And, it really gives you a lot of insight on what are people thinking about? What are they really looking for when they're seeking help? What's going on out there? And periodically we'll have someone call in that, regardless of, how much detail you get into about exactly what happens in our retreat centers and what happens in treatment or what have you, they always want more detail. We'll talk about cognitive therapy and the things that are in that. We'll be able to talk about all of the theory on substance abuse and addictions treatment and all of that and all that entails. And what it really comes down to, and there always comes this point where you really have to step back and start taking a look at, what are you really looking for? What is it that, what answers are you looking for when you're talking about getting some help for an addiction? And so often, there's people out there that are looking for the latest and greatest scientific theory being employed. Tell me exactly, what is the significance of this happening in my life or my loved one's life? And they're really just kind of spinning their wheels to death trying to figure out exactly what is it that you're going to say that's going to work. And that's essentially what they want to know.
Well, and yes, but aren't they also looking for somebody to take that monkey off their back?
Well, yeah, that's common. That's typical. And that's pretty understandable. It always is. I mean, that's the bottom line. They're looking for help.
Yeah, because probably they're at the end of their ropes and they've been patiently waiting for the addict to get to the end of his ropes. And of course, that low bottom comes so long after normal human beings can withstand the pounding, the daily pounding that you get from an addict.
Yep.
And I don't mean physically, I mean emotionally.
Yep. And right now, what we really see, there are thousands of treatment centers and websites and everything about the subject of addiction. You can spend your entire life going through all of these things. And we're right in the middle, and we've talked about this a couple of times on this show. We're really right in the middle of this battle between the medical community and the psychological community as far as who's going to own this problem of addiction. Whose is it to deal with?
Why does it have to be one or the other? I don't get that.
Well, because it's either a process of thought or it's strictly a process of biological repair and problem. Where you get into pharmacology. We're looking for a pill to handle this now. And, the medical community is saying, no, if this is a disease, we're going to treat it like any other disease. Show me a cancer patient where the treatment prescribed is talk therapy. You're not going to find that. And that's a lot of times the argument that we hear.
Okay.
So they say, well, if we're going to call this a medical issue, then we're going to deal with it medically. And that means we can deal with it on an outpatient basis, and we can find some medications to handle this. And the psychology world is saying, well, maybe there's a component to that, but the talk therapy, working through your feelings, your emotions, how you perceive life, all of those things, that's a big issue. We have to deal with that. And it's really being torn in two. And frankly, what's really spurring this war on is who's going to get the insurance dollars for it.
Aha.
Now, that's where...
And us addicts in the middle, we're just pawns.
A little bit. That's true. That's a little bit the case. And that's really what we see. And this is a whole nother topic. Maybe one for tomorrow. I know you got some political folks coming on the rest of the week. This would be a great one for them. But that's really what's happening. As soon as the government gets involved with how are we going to treat certain things, usually it's not going to have that big of an impact when it comes to something that what I believe is spiritual at core. Now we start having a problem. That's where culture is really shaping our views on addiction just as much as anything else, more so than research a lot of times.
All right, something just flashed through my mind, and if this is a rabbit trail, let's not go down it. But we've begun to notice in different states in the union where they want to put pedophilism, is that a word? Being a pedophile?
Yep.
As a disease. No, not as a disease, as a mental disorder. Have you heard this? California has done this. I think Vermont or New Hampshire has tried to do this. California is going to get it done. Is that why? So they can get their hands in the middle of the cookie jar with the insurance money?
Well, frankly, as far as pedophilia, I hope that they do get it classified as a mental disorder as opposed to an orientation where we have to accept it. And that's really kind of the end game of that.
Okay.
As soon as you start discussing, when culture has a role in defining morality, and the farther that culture is being driven from a biblical standard of where their moral understandings come from, then you really have the difficulty. And that's really what we're seeing in addictions. You had spoken earlier about that story, the woman in Indiana.
Yeah.
And you said God had blessed that conversation when she called the other boy's mom. And no one was offended.
Right.
It was able to go off
because you know how
without a
that
hitch.
probably would have gone.
Oh, absolutely. That'd be a difficult one.
If there weren't two Christian women there who put their children first, that would have been, well, you lousy B word.
Right.
How dare you accuse my little itty-bitty innocent boy Johnny of corrupting your son?
Right. Well, now it's to the point where when we start talking about addictions and we say wrong moral choices, that's offensive to most people anymore. Unfortunately, even a lot of Christians find that offensive when we should understand that that's frankly our primary issue.
I heard the most interesting statement from a pastor the other day. He said, do I want gay same gender marriage? No, because it's biblically wrong. But if we let them have it, then we'll be able to classify the problems they have within it, get the statistics, and maybe somewhere down the line we'll prove that that entire lifestyle is destructive, not only biologically, but emotionally also, because two same-gendered people in the end can't get along. You don't have to comment on that. I'm just saying,
what?
That's the
that's
pedophile
the problem
word.
that I see, though. I mean, because the correlations are relatively similar. And that's really why I feel like this is such a needed topic to really explore, and we really need to understand this very, very thoroughly right now. Because frankly, what I believe will happen if he's right, or if that's the course of action that we take as a society or as a culture, I've never heard of one that ever went back on anything like this.
Right.
I think as opposed to understanding what would be destructive by having the data, I think it would simply just destruct our society. And that's the problem. And that's what we see with the substance abuse.
Yeah, in the middle of substance abuse, we have all kinds of hurts, habits, and hang-ups. We're talking about some of the early basics, what you can look for in a spouse, in a child, in a friend, in a coworker. What are those signs that maybe there's an issue and you can help? Yeah, you can help. Joe Mites from St. Gregory in the house. Ryan's producing. I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
The only way we come to know the Saviorship of Jesus Christ is by bowing and acknowledging that He is Lord and King over all the earth.
Jesus Christ died on a cross, paid the penalty for our sin, and by repenting of our sin and accepting Him by faith, what He did for us, we are forgiven.
Salvation is not a combination of faith and works. Salvation is by faith alone in God.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope, open my eyes to see the world through different eyes, revealing your light, restoring hope.
3:38:22 before the top. I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. Love this job. Couldn't do it without you. We were talking earlier that the premiere of the National Restoring Hope show airs live this Sunday noon Central Daylight Time, right here on the channel that you're listening to it. So if you're on the web with us, it'll be here. If you're on KTIA, it'll be there. If you have satellite radio, it will be on channel 131, which is the Christian talk station, and also in a couple of other markets, and it just continues to grow. I love it when God brings the right people into my life because it's so peaceful. You know, bad relationships can be just like fingers on a chalkboard. And Michael Hamilton, who is my representative in the national world, has done just a spectacular job getting these affiliates lined up. And you guys over at St. Gregory's have been so wonderful. And Dr. Michael Hartwig. And anyway, first show is about a man who went through the Exodus program, was a flaming gay liberal in the 60s, discovered Christ, rejected that lifestyle, has been married to a woman, and has raised two grown boys. Jack Moreland is his name. He'll be our first guest as he talks about the fact that to him, now wait, did I cheapen his story? I didn't mean to do that. Let me back up. Jack feels there is no gay gene. There is no I was born this way. His feeling would be, and we'll get it straight from the horse's mouth, that being attracted to the same sex gender is no different than being attracted to small children, or being attracted to animals, or a man having lust in his heart every time he looks at a woman, and all of those other sexually deviant things that the accuser uses as his most powerful tools. I mean, let's face it, if you could get rid of lust, if you could get rid of sexual deviance, and you could get rid of greed and jealousy in this world, what kind of world would we live in? The deceiver controls those 3 or 4 areas and destroys lives every single day, destroys marriages, destroys relationships between parents and their children through adultery and then through divorce. And I go on and on and on and on. And I know it because I'm guilty of it. I was a sinful man when it came to that kind of stuff. Didn't look at myself that way at all, but I was a sinful man. I know what it's like to live with lust in my heart. And if you think the lust is gone from my heart, it's not. It's not. It's still my first reaction. The deceiver has that control over me. But then my God filter drops in. Thanks to Jesus, he just kicks it into place. Just think about when you get your eyes checked and they keep putting those little lenses in front of your eyes until you find that perfect, I can see perfect now. That's the 20/20 vision I want. Well, when the God filter drops down in front of a man who has Jesus in his heart, the lust filter goes away. The God filter comes up and lust is gone. So just think about what it could be like if we could eliminate those sins in our world. And that's what we're going to talk about. Restoring Hope Live, 12 noon, Central Daylight Time, on the channel you're listening to right now. Facebook your friends. Tell them it's on XM Sirius, channel 131. All right, Joe Mites is in the house from St. Gregory's, and we're talking about just some of the basics. And so you find your significant other, spouse, whoever this person is in your life, they begin to walk funny, and they smell of liquor, and they need more cash than they need, and their sleeping patterns change. But what happens before that? What happens in somebody's life that they begin to abuse a drug like alcohol?
Well, I mean, it always goes back to the idea that drugs and alcohol work. They're helping you at least perceive your life as more optimal, or your point of view or state of mind or the feeling that you have when it comes to confronting life feels better and more confrontable when you're under the influence of those. And that's not always the case for everybody, and it's going to be the case on and off for a lot of people. We talked about that before too. People, can go through a course of prescription drugs, not abusing it, but taking it for pain regularly. Everything in their life is fine. Everything's fine. They come off of it when the pain's gone or when their wound healed, and that's the end of it. Maybe 6 months later, they have another injury, but this time they're struggling in their marriage, or work is too stressful. Any other of these contributors start to arise. All of a sudden, now that drug or alcohol helps them to get through it. So they're going to gravitate that way, and that's how it starts. But frankly, the odd part is, especially from the perspective of a loved one, they usually are closer to the truth about what addiction is and substance abuse and all of those things at that point, then a lot of times they will be much further down the road after they've been quote unquote educated.
Okay.
And the reason I
but
say
they're
that,
in denial.
No, not necessarily. Let's say, I can tell you this. When my family found out that I was using meth, I was using meth. I mean, it is what it is. But I can tell you, they knew a lot more about the problem for real at that point than they did after they'd spoken with all the psychologists and the addiction experts and all of those things. And the reason I say that is because all of these things, when it comes to treating addiction, are largely theory, unless it's treating a fundamental issue, physical health and healing that way, dealing with life rationally just on those fundamental terms. Outside of that, we deal with lots and lots of theories. Now, a lot of people, there's a lot of brain scans out there. In fact, there's several treatment centers that are incorporating brain scan in their treatment process.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, now tell me what you see from that brain scan that helps you treat that person.
Well, that's the key issue right there. Now, what you see on the brain scan are the areas of activity or inactivity. And you compare that with a normal functioning person. And a lot of times there's some stark differences. What they don't usually tell you is that those images that you'll see, when you compare them to someone who just lost a spouse or is really dealing with a tough time in life, not a whole lot of difference. So you can have these brain scans, but that doesn't really tell someone, okay, well, this is what we're going to do about it. In fact, most people, they only have a general notion of what's actually occurring in those regions of the brain. And it never gets to a point where, having this brain scan is really going to direct treatment and make sure that you're cured when you walk out of the door. That's the problem. That's really what we see with a lot of these theories. They pretty well come and go, but the fundamental issues remain the same. And, I was thinking about this. It was odd. I was really kind of mulling some of this right when you sent me a message earlier today.
Yeah.
And I'd said that there's the folks who called in and they really wanted to get down to the basics or to the actual nitty gritty and say, what they wanted to hear was this magical thing that they'd never heard of before that we were going to say or do to their loved one. And all of a sudden that was what it was. I mean, they were basically calling and saying, what is the magical part though? And that's what they were wanting to hear.
Yeah.
And a lot of times there's not. And it's so confusing out there because, we've got so many huge terms. We've got so much science and flashy things that we can throw at addiction. But the fact of the matter is, it's the fundamental issues of life that really are always going to need to be dealt with. It's going to come down with someone's, a lot of times fortitude in confronting those issues. It's going to come down to, motivations to really work out a lot of those problems. And that's really a difficult pill to swallow, but frankly, it's a really motivating one for me because that's a lot simpler than having to deal with a neuroscientist all day.
So the problems are so many times between the 5 inches between our ears. We'll talk about that when we come back. Salem Radio Network News will update us at the top of the hour, but I've just been handled from my producer, Dan. The Boston Marathon has been hit by a spectacular terrorist attack. Some are saying 10 or more dead, 30 injured. Bombs went off at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. That happened about 16:15, so that would be 3:15 was our last update. So we'll keep you updated on that. Salem News at the top of the hour.
Choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
The only way we come to know the Saviorship of Jesus Christ is by bowing and acknowledging that He is Lord and King over all the earth.
Jesus Christ died on a cross, paid the penalty for our sin, and by repenting of our sin and accepting Him by faith, what He did for us, we are forgiven.
Salvation is not a combination of faith and works. Salvation is by faith alone in God.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope, open my eyes to see the world through different eyes, revealing your light, restoring hope.
10 minutes after the hour, at the top of the hour, special news coverage from Salem Radio Network News at about 3 o'clock, a little before 3 o'clock this afternoon. Well, no, it would have been 2:15 Eastern Time. Does that sound about right when you started hearing about coverage? They said 16:15, but that would be, well, we'll figure that out. A bomb blast at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. People are reported dead, many injured. They're looking into that now. I'm sure that you will be able to check up on that on not only this radio station, but other news networks as the day goes on. All right, Joe Mintz from St. Gregory's is my guest, and we're talking about the beginnings, the basics of, I guess it is when you can detect.
Well, it's really just trying to make sense out of all of the things that has been piled into this idea of addiction. And that's really the most needed thing, because especially me, I know I hear, I get all of the alerts and pushes about, new scientific breakthrough in recovery. And it'll be, something really, really flashy. But the problem is I've never seen any outcomes get any better from all this stuff, regardless of all of the, incredible things that people are throwing at the problem of addiction. It still comes back to, who are you? How are you handling your life? It's those fundamentals. And it reminded me of a quote. Bear with me for a second, because I just love the guy. Anybody that is a C.S. Lewis guy,
I love C.S. Lewis.
He's my absolute favorite. But I thought this applied really, really well to this entire notion. And from Mere Christianity, it's just a couple sentences here, but all sensible people know that if you're tired and hungry, a meal will do you good. But the modern theory of nourishment, all about the vitamins and proteins, is a different thing. People ate their dinners and felt better long before the theory of vitamins was ever heard of, and the theory of vitamins is someday abandoned. They will go on eating their dinners just as they always had. And it's the same thing with addiction. It's life. We're always going to deal with things that are being thrown at us. We're always going to be sucked down the you like to call them rabbit holes in conversation. I'll call them rabbit holes of life. And that's really what these things are. We're always being tempted away from fulfilling who we are meant to be. And it's always been that, regardless of the incredible things that come out in the scientific world. We're dealing with souls. That's what we're dealing with. That, to me, is the fundamental problem. medicine, there's a lot of things that can really come and aid us. They can help us feel better. They can help us heal. There's a lot of terrific things in psychology. It gives us techniques to better understand how do we best just deal with our life on a fundamental basis. How do we, help be more rational, or how do we really put things into perspective that have been bothering us for a long time and confront things. There's a lot of terrific things that can come out of that. But at the end of the day, we're still just dealing with a created being. And we were given a pretty good manual for that a couple thousand years ago.
Yeah.
And there's so much truth in it, and we just keep trying to find better truth out there than what we're already given. We keep seeking. Well, it can't be just that. We've got to find something better than just that. Confess your sins and surrender your will to God's. It can't be that.
It can't be that simple.
Right.
Just to go home to our Creator and be honest and tell the truth.
Right. And, it's amazing, though. We keep trying to pile all of these things onto it. And you just see culturally there's such a longing to find the magic bullet in all of these ailments. Our ailments may be somewhat more complex now because we have a more complex society. But fundamentally, our problems are not different than what the problems in life have always been. We've always sought peace and healing. We've always sought hope and joy. That's really what we're talking about.
It's like we were talking earlier. Lust, greed, jealousy, not honoring our parents and our other figures, deciding that we have idols other than our own created God or our creator God. All those, they've all been around for thousands and thousands of years.
That's right.
People are still messed up with the same stuff.
Same stuff.
Yeah. And if little Johnny sees daddy talking horrible to mom and glorifies getting drunk with cans of beer smashing into his head and then passing out at the end of the night, if little Johnny sees that, guess what little Johnny's going to think's cool? Acting like daddy. Because if daddy was a race car driver or a pro football player or an incredible man of God and a preacher, Johnny grew up to be like daddy that way. I mean, what goes on in our rooftops is so important, and we've lost sight of that. I hope we're beginning to grab a hold of it again. I'm not sure.
Well, the troublesome part, and the reason I think it's an important topic is, culturally we try to find better excuses for all of these behaviors as well. When it comes to addictions, and I brought this up a bit ago, but people are now offended if you might suggest, well, you're making some wrong moral choices. Well, it can't be about something that you've done wrong. We have to try to find the reason for it and justify all of these things away. You'll go to a psychologist for 15 years trying to work through your feelings about why somebody accused you of making wrong moral choices, and you never even get to making the wrong moral choice. And it just doesn't have to be that way. And the reason why I say, to me, it's a really exciting thing to talk about and think about is because these are fixable. This is something that if these are things that I'm doing, then they're things that I cannot do. And that there's a lot of hope. It's not just me. It's not just because I was made wrong, and there must be something that's just not overcomable for me. Now granted, we come from different viewpoints on the process to find healing from addictions. But
we're not 180 different.
We're not 180
We're kissing
different.
cousins.
I was going to say, I don't think that we would be too far off if I were to, mention this idea to you that people feel good about themselves in a meeting when they show up and they've just reached a new milestone. Be it 30 days, 60 days, a year, 18 months, any of those. They feel really good about it. That's cause for celebration. Well, if we didn't get to have any control in that, if we had no choice in the matter individually, it wouldn't be cause for celebration. And, there's just an awful lot of hope out there. And the real issue is, how do we help you get there?
Well, and in the center of everything that you do at St. Gregory's, that we do in a 12-step program, whatever, is Christ.
Yep.
It's always your creator. All right. That's it for Monday. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for everybody for listening. And until then, just do one thing, would you? Please. Just pray.